Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here on, here we are. We're approaching now late August, and are we having a football season? Looks like it, kind of, maybe. I don't know. It looks like we're having a football season now, although, and which is, more than we can say for some other conferences out there, boys, right? I mean, I don't know if I smell the grass just yet, but, there's something there, right?
UCF is practicing, and they'll continue to practice until someone tells them to stop.
Same goes for UCF men's and women's soccer and UCF volleyball, too. It's until someone tells us there's not a season, we are going to assume there will be a season. Probably a fairly safe assumption. We are SB Nation's home for UCF Night Sports. You can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and UCF_Banneret on Twitter. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to lead with some UCF stuff, some personnel transactions to talk about. Also some news regarding the FIU game and the Georgia Tech game, at least scheduled as of right now. We're going to wrap by talking about what is the actual feasibility if things continue to go sideways. What could spring football actually look like? And we got a little glimpse of that from the SWAC, believe it or not, in FCS. So lots to talk about here. But let's first talk about some new faces coming into UCF. How about Josh Heupel here scooping up some transfers? There's some kids who are local kids who want to be a little bit closer to home in the midst of this pandemic. Kind of can't blame him for it. But news dropped today. This is the most recent stuff. RJ Harvey, if you follow high school football in Orlando, he's a familiar name. Went to Edgewater High School. He was a quarterback. UCF wanted him to play running back when they were recruiting him, but he decided to go to UVA, Virginia, because they said that they would use him as a quarterback. Well, RJ has decided to enter the transfer portal, and he's told the Orlando Sentinel that he would come to UCF. His father, Robert Harvey Sr., tells the Sentinel that RJ will be a running back for UCF. He was a three-star recruit, class of 2019, and he would enter what is a good backfield now, Murph. But in addition, but is going to be thin after the 2020 season with Otis Anderson and Greg McCrae both being seniors. You have, like you mentioned in your article on blackandgoldbanneret.com, you also got Bentavious Thompson back there. You got Trillian Coles. Demarius Good is a redshirt freshman, true freshman Johnny Richardson back there. But, take away Otis and Greg, and there's not a whole lot going on. So you need a little bit of depth, and why not call upon a guy who is a local kid, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of proven depth, right? I think UCF believes in what they've got behind Otis and Greg. Certainly, Bentavious Thompson was a breakout of sorts in 2019. But we haven't seen a whole lot of Trillian Coles or Demarius Good to say, what they are, and Johnny Richardson's a true freshman. I think you're sort of like with all of UCF's transfer pickups this month. It's really more about the future than it is for 2020. And in the case of RJ Harvey, a guy who is pretty stocky at 5'8", but before he got to UVA, he was clocked at a 4.41 40. And so he's got speed, and UCF's had some pretty good undersized backs and turn them into something special. Maybe this is the next guy. But he basically left UVA in March. The thought then from Bronco Mendenhall, UVA's coach, was that he was going to go to the JUCO route. But he did not. In July, he actually officially entered the transfer portal and talked to FSU and UCF. And like you said, Jeff, his father, who broke the news to the Orlando Sentinel, his father said the reason why he talked to UC, the reason why he's going to UCF is because that team, recruited him out of high school, and there was a relationship established there with Josh Heupel and running backs coach Anthony Tucker, and so that was reignited now. And so FSU kind of came late to the party, while UCF had sort of known about Harvey for a while, and that is why he's decided to come back to Orlando, his hometown, playing for the hometown team. We'll see, obviously, whether he gets whether he gets a waiver to play this year, much like Devad Wilson and the other transfers that UCF has brought in. But it's interesting to see UCF sort of pilfering the Power Five as they have this month. Now they've got a guy from Virginia after bringing in a guy from Florida, a guy from Nebraska, and a guy from Georgia. You like to see it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about Deontay Marks next, too, because he's a wide receiver who comes from the Florida Gators, originally out of DeLand High, a 3-star. It has, like you wrote on the story on the site, he's got a track background as well. And he's coming back, too. So what do you think he adds to the mix? And I got to give you credit for the DJ Khaled reference, too, by the way.
Well, I mean, it just, UCF.
Another one.
I mean, it's another one that UCF is getting out of the P5, and this was before Harvey. And by the way, Harvey was reportedly got to campus on Monday, and Marks got to campus on Tuesday. I'm sure they'll go through all the COVID protocols. They'll have to quarantine for a week, and then hopefully they'll be able to join in on some team activities. But with Deontay Marks, it's another super speedy outside weapon for Josh Heupel's offense. I mean, this is a kid who ran in the 4.3 40 range in high school and had a broad jump of 11 feet 3 inches, which went past the measuring board when he was going through physical skills. So
his broad jump is literally off the chart.
Off the charts. It's literally off the charts. Yes. And so you've got more speed, more athleticism at the wide receiver position, which you can never have enough of. Certainly, that fits in well with UCF, and with guys like Jacob Harris and Trey Nixon, Marlon Williams, Otis Anderson too. Those 4 guys are all seniors. So I mean, we'll get into the eligibility discussion later. But in a normal year, those guys would be heading into their final seasons. So you need reinforcements. And you get Deontay Marks, a Florida commit, and it's really the end of a weird journey where he went from Florida, then said he was transferring to UCF, and then he pulled that back, and 5 days later said he was transferring to Ole Miss, and then he pulled that back, and now he's back at UCF. And I think this time it's for real, and it's to stay. Deontay Marks is officially back at UCF. He's committed to UCF a second time this summer, but anyway, this is how it went down.
Let me ask you this: and Eric, I want you to touch upon this too, because are you guys seeing this as just like a temporary thing because with the local kids coming back because of the virus, or do you see that, or do you see any potential for? Could UCF become even more of a destination for local? I mean, I know that Scott Frost worked really hard in trying to keep Central Florida kids here, which much more to the extent than George O'Leary did. I'm sure if O'Leary was here to say he would say what would he always used to say about that, right? Some of them they just want to leave, right? Well, they don't always want to leave, George. And could this be like an everlasting thing, going forward, especially if these guys work out?
Well, I'll just say up front, in the case of Marks and Harvey, COVID played a direct role in both of their decisions to commit to UCF. When Marks put out the Instagram post that he was actually going to Ole Miss, he changed his mind because according to his mother, he wanted to actually play closer to home. As a DeLand high grad, he wanted to play closer to home to have his mother see more games. Then certainly traveling right now is not something you should be doing. So, it'd be easier for his mom to see him play here instead of getting on a plane and going to Oxford. And the same thing with Harvey was his father said, Virginia, Charlottesville, it's a long way away from Orlando. And so in both those cases, COVID did play did have a role in their decisions. But I think you could also say like UCF wouldn't be in position to get either of these players, if not for the success they've had. And so this could be a trend going forward. It's what we talked about with Devad Wilson a few weeks ago was, a 4-star recruit that went to Georgia, one of the best cornerbacks in the nation. He's kind of the guy he's one of the guys you could like, wow, those kind of players, those highly touted recruits, look at UCF as a place where they can go play and ball out. And so I think this entire month has sort of been a good sign of where UCF sits, among those as far as attracting more P5 talent. Not that they've already done that, but like now you can see like, wow, these guys are turning down, offers and spurning schools that were in the power conferences to come to UCF because they know they can not only play here, but they can succeed here and win here. But certainly the climate we're in right now also plays a role.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Murph. And I think, Murph, you brought up the relationship standpoint. I think these coaches, we saw this in basketball with C.J. Walker. Mm-hmm. The fact that the staff, you recruit this kid, you've built a relationship, even if you don't get the kid originally, okay, even if they go somewhere else, if they decide to transfer, I think that helps because, yes, you want to stay close to home. I think that's valid, but I don't think you would be staying close to home if you didn't know who the coaching staff was. So the fact you knew them, and I think Randy's obviously known some of these guys from his past days at obviously recruiting at Florida, going back that far, among others. And then, I think the relationship factor plays a role in this. And I think it's not an accident that we've seen this with UCF there in football or in basketball. And honestly, in a majority of the sports, I think we also have to accept the fact this is part of college athletics now. This is not just something that's, and I hope we remember this when people flip out in December every time a signing class is done and they're like, oh, why are we ranked so low? Why do we only have 2 stars? Because it's not as big of a deal as it used to be because the finished product really won't be finished for weeks or months in advance because kids could be coming available that you might, down the pipeline. I mean, there's multiple ways now to build rosters, especially if you're looking for something of a quick fix. And I think this applies to football here and what you both have brought up the examples of the issues on the roster they might have after this season, whenever this season gets played, more than likely will be taking place in 2021. And these pieces will address that, even if they're not eligible for this season. And we're not even 100% sure, Murph, there's a chance they could be available this season. Could they not?
They could be. We're all waiting on waivers for each of them. So they could be available. But yeah, I think in the long run, this was not about, if they play in 2020, great. And certainly UCF might need a cornerback or two. So if Devad Wilson especially gets a waiver, that'd be fantastic because he could play right away as a kid with SEC experience from last year. But all 4 of these kids are underclassmen, and Wilson's the most experienced one, quote unquote, as a redshirt sophomore. They're all sophomores and freshmen. So this is not just 2020. This is about 2021, 2022, and building for the future.
Our friend of the show, Chris Vanini from The Athletic, tweeted earlier today, said, UCF, SMU, Houston, FAU, and FIU have all found success in grabbing P5 transfers, many of whom are kids looking to move back close to home. It's not a coincidence they're all in fertile recruiting areas. This is something that we've talked about for years with UCF, and it seems to be coming to fruition. I just wonder, like you said, COVID-19 has a pretty clear impact on that. But I do wonder if once long term, if assuming things go back to some state of normalcy, that especially if these guys do have success at UCF, that the word's going to get out that hey, UCF is a place to be. Yeah, you can go to a place in the SEC or the ACC, but those places are usually crowded. And if you're not going to get playing time there, you could get playing time somewhere else. Why not come back home? So I think that's, like I said, if you're UCF, you just kind of have to. You might not be the first choice, but you're probably going to be the last choice for some pretty talented kids out there. And I think that's not a bad place to be. As far as UCF football is concerned, for the upcoming season, I wanted to transition to this. So we got a little bit of data here. First of all, FIU 6 days ago announced a delay of fall competition through September 16th. Obviously, UCF was scheduled to play FIU September 12th. So that's not going to happen. So UCF's football schedule will not start with FIU. Instead, as it looks right now, right this instant, UCF
Wednesday night.
Yeah, right. UCF's first football game is slated to be Saturday, September the 19th at Georgia Tech. And then they're scheduled to play the following Thursday at ECU. And the home opener would be against Tulsa on Saturday, October the 3rd. And we got some potential news on that a little bit later. But
card subject to change, as they always say. And when you go out to subject to change.
Now, I will say before you continue, Jeff, that Danny White put out a statement last Friday saying that they expect right now for the first home game to be on that October 3rd against Tulsa. So if anyone's holding out hope that they can somehow fill something into that September 12th spot, if they do, which I don't think they will, it would be a road game at the very least. They will not play at home until October 3rd.
Right. In conjunction with that, well, not in conjunction, but coincidentally, the Georgia Tech game, we got some news on that. There was a little bit of stuff trickling out about, what would Atlanta United and the Atlanta Falcons do at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They had made their proposals to the city of Atlanta. Obviously, Georgia Tech being in the city also has to make their plans known. And Georgia Tech announced earlier today that for their safety protocols in place at Bobby Dodd Stadium, Georgia Tech will seat only 20% of the stadium's full capacity, which works out to about 11,000 per game. I'll get the exact figure on Bobby Dodd Stadium here, but in addition to that, they said I think it was only 400 seats would be available for visiting teams. So it's 55,000 at Bobby Dodd. It's not a very big stadium, of course, but only 400 seats for UCF. Visiting teams will be allotted 400 tickets with designated seating sections. Seats within those sections will be assigned at the discretion of the visiting institution. So good luck if you're one of the 400 UCF fans who will have the ability to attend UCF's opener at Georgia Tech. Well, this is what are you going on and on about up there?
Listen, we both shared George O'Leary. George O'Leary it was announced he's going to be inducted to the Georgia Tech Hall of Fame. All right. Brent Key is on their staff with Jeff Collins. They all came from UCF, and all we get is 400 tickets. Come on. Can we call George? Can George hook us up for a couple hundred more? Come on.
Eric, it may actually not be. It may not be it's at least 400, but it probably is going to be more than 400 because. So the way Georgia Tech has set it up, as many schools will, is among those 11,000 seats available, the first batch will go to 2020 season ticket holders, those who have season tickets for 2020, and then there's another class of season ticket holders at Georgia Tech if you have what's called their Stinger mobile pass holders. So basically, two different types of season ticket holders, and then if that if those two sections of people alone, if that doesn't come to 11,000, whatever's remaining will turn into single game tickets released to the general public. So if you can't get one of the 400 tickets that UCF will be allotted, you could certainly look on the market.
There you go. Now we're talking. Well, it's in all seriousness, it is insane. The connections between these two schools is insane. It is insane. You know, you got Todd Stansbury, the former AD, is at Georgia. I mean, it is kind of wild. And if this game actually gets played, which I will believe it gets played when the kickoff actually happens.
Yeah.
All right. In fairness, like, there's a part of me that feels like, Jeff, we're going to be doing an emergency podcast and we're going to be calling Murph, who's going to be stranded in the Atlanta airport waiting for a flight back because the game got canceled.
The game is exactly 1 month from today when we're recording this. Today's August the 19th. It's scheduled to be played on September the 19th. We have a whole month to figure this out.
Remember when I think we said last week that UCF's first game was a month from today, and that was the FIU game.
Right. It just keeps getting pushed back.
We'll see. We're going to see. I mean, as we talk, North Carolina is having campus issues with the virus. Notre Dame is paused in their situation. Who knows what the ACC is going to do if they decide to drop it to 10 games and cut the non-conference game. I still think that's on the table here at some point in the next few weeks.
Are we still holding our breath that the ACC will go back to this, will start their season on the 26th, sort of in line with the rest of the Power Three?
I think that's still in play until, we get to that date. I really do. I mean, that's their option. If they feel like they're behind, that could be a possibility. And, the weird thing about UCF losing the FIU game, I wrote about this right on Black and Gold Banneret with our good friend Andrew, who chipped in on the article. And I proposed they went conference only with 10 games. And it's kind of funny now, the way this is playing out. Had they done that, UCF would have gotten 5 home games. With the way it looks like right now, UCF's probably only going to end up with 4 home games this year. So I just wonder, I first guessed it at the time. I still am in the camp that believes they should have gone the 10 conference games only route, but it could be all a moot point in a few weeks, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that schedule. But at least we know that at least there'll be some UCF people in the stands if this game gets played, which maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Well, we're still also looking at the situation in Tulsa. There was some news on that today too, right, Eric?
Yeah, they got a spread over there as well.
Yeah, they paused, according to Brett McMurphy, they paused football practice after 8 players tested positive for COVID-19. Actually, it was Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World who had it first, but a total of 16 players now in quarantine. And that's at Tulsa, which is already. So, by the way, they lost their AD.
He's going to a job in the NCAA, yeah. Right,
he's moving up to the NCAA's offices. Boy, I don't envy whoever comes in after him. So we're still again. This is just one of those things where we're just going to have to sit back and take it one day at a time. It's going to be weird, and everything's going to be literally one day at a time.
Well, there's one thing we can guarantee, and that is UCF is practicing at this hour.
That's right.
As of Wednesday night, they are practicing. They are continuing to practice, Murph. So let's do this crazy concept and actually talk about the team, which, you might as well if they're going to play in a month. And I know you're going to have some interview availabilities coming up shortly and all that. So let me ask you this. Put the COVID stuff aside. What are some of the interesting things you're looking to learn and find out about this team right now as they been practicing?
Well, I think what we need, and we should be able to talk to Josh Heupel on Thursday morning. So depending on when you listen to this, we will already have talked to Coach Heupel. But I think one of the things you want to, find out is where your position battle is at. And certainly, we think there's some on the offensive line with their, replacing Jake Brown and Jordan Johnson. We knew about that back in spring ball. So what are those looking like now? And so I think that's a big part is, what is UCF's O-line 5 kind of look like at this point? And then just, how is Dylan Gabriel coming along? And I know everyone's going to want to ask about Mackenzie Milton too. And I'm sure,
I'm pretty sure we're going to get absolutely nothing from them about that.
I think I'm sure he'll speak on how, proud and how amazed he is, at McKenzie's recovery, but I would not be holding my breath to hear that McKenzie's been cleared or anything like that. But certainly, I think the thing that I'm looking forward most, tomorrow is how the offensive line is really shaping up, because that's really a position of concern, if there is one. When you say like they lost a lot of a lot of experience, a lot of quality players, quality play there, and they've got guys to fill in those roles. That's not an issue of depth or numbers. It's just, how is that all panning out?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I always laugh about these kinds of these situations with, how much are we really going to get from? And the truth is, like, we actually have a lot of news to ask about, to Coach Heupel, just as a lot of other members of the media have to ask, want to ask about their coaches. But the coaches are kind of all full speed ahead right now, and how much do they really know?
Well, and the thing is, I wonder, guys, how are the reps going to be distributed? Because if you move forward the season, and I think this is going to be the premise, depth is going to be very important, because, and it's always been like, oh, well, you got to stay, you never know, you got to have depth because of injury. Well, you got to consider the fact, what if one of your players and position players gets this virus? Now, you might have to have guys deeper on your depth chart that have to contribute more than you might expect. So how do you prepare those guys? I think is one of the interesting subplots about this. Not to mention, you're looking at a situation where you're going to be playing more than likely in limited capacities throughout the season, whether it be at home or on the road, more than likely. How do you adjust to that? Because, Murph, you were in Tulsa when UCF lost last season, and a lot of people felt that one of the issues they had there was no crowd, it was lousy weather, and they kind of played flat because there was no, and some of these players have said they get extra juice based on atmosphere, based on the crowd, especially at home in particular with the bounce out. So now all of a sudden you might have a situation where players have to adapt to that.
Yeah, well, firstly, I don't blame the Tulsa loss at any part on the crowd or the weather. I blame it because UCF shot themselves in the foot about 18 times with penalties and bad mistakes. But yeah, I think the point is understood in terms of home games. I mean, you can see that even now with like NBA teams playing on neutral courts, that sometimes these teams that you would think, obviously if they're playing at home, if the Lakers are playing at home against the Trailblazers, sorry, as I go to a different sport, I don't think the Lakers lose game one. But without that crowd there, it's hard to get yourself amped up sometimes. Certainly UCF's crowd has been instrumental, and certainly at times instrumental in this team's success. I don't think you would have seen them win maybe one, but maybe not both of those title games against Memphis, if not for the crowd. And right. I honestly believe that. But we also should mention, too, that we need to be on the watch for guys who will opt out. There have been a lot of college players who've already decided to opt out. We do know of 2 UCF Knights, at least publicly, have opted out already. One of them is Devontae Dawson, a JUCO transfer who came in this past winter, who was going to be scheduled to see snaps right away at reserve corner. He has opted out due to COVID-19. And then Josh Kelly released a YouTube video shortly a while back saying he's going to opt out, and he's actually also going into the transfer portal. Josh Kelly's been at UCF for a few years as a special teams player. But will there be more? And I think there probably will be. So you need to be aware. That's another reason to develop depth. And I think especially with Dawson out, and maybe some things we're hearing about other guys who might opt out, depth in that defensive secondary is going to be one thing that UCF really is going to lean upon this year. And that's where you see a guy like Devod Wilson or Jaden Francois, if they get those waivers, could really impact this team right away.
All right. Well, again, hopefully we'll get some answers tomorrow when you talk to Josh Heupel. I know you'll have something on that tomorrow. And by the way, by tomorrow, I mean Thursday on that as well. So, all right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about what's going on around the rest of college football and see if we do end up going to a spring season, which we can't fully rule out at this point, and some have already done that, what might that look like? Well, we got some hints earlier this week. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here. Follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. All right. So right now, UCF, of course, is planning to play football in the fall, as are 6 conferences in the major college football and FBS college football. But there have been some rumblings about, what if COVID-19 continues to wreak havoc on everybody, and if we have to move to the spring? Well, we've all been speculating. We've been speculating on this very show, in fact, Eric Lopez, right, about what a spring season would look like. But earlier this week, we actually got a glimpse of what that might look like, and the first glimpse came from the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, which is one half of the 2 main conferences where HBCUs populate, and they released their spring schedule. They would play 6 conference football games, and the weekend would the season would kick off the weekend of February 27th. And it would end with the SWAC championship game on May the 1st. Their plan would be they would take a break during week 3. The entire league would get a bye week. And interestingly enough, gentlemen, that's the weekend of the basketball championships, or at least when there's.
That's why they're taking a week off.
Yeah. So, right. That's why they wanted to take the week off there. So they would play a total of they have here scheduled a total of 8 weeks, including that one bye week. April 24th would be an open day, and then the SWAC championship would be on May the 1st. So they have 2 bye weeks in there with slated into their schedule, or actually slated into their schedule. Everybody would get 2 bye weeks, plus there would be a week off between the last regular season week and the conference championship. Their counterparts, the MEAC, have also actually just today, Wednesday, August 19th, released their schedule for the spring. They would also start on February 27th, but end on April 24th, also with their championship game on May the 1st. Interestingly enough, the MEAC has never had a football championship game in its history, so this would be the first time that they actually do that, assuming everything goes the way it is. And by the way, this would include both Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M, whom UCF was scheduled to play earlier this year. So I guess that brings up some questions about the FAMU game, obviously. Although I think obviously FCS is still letting some teams play in the fall, at least as of right now, so that they can collect a paycheck. We don't know whether or not FAMU is officially playing as an independent right now in the fall, and then possibly conveniently joining the MEAC for the spring. But as of right now, there's still some question marks about that game with UCF. But at least you have a plan. Word came down earlier Wednesday as well that the Big Ten is throwing around an idea for a season ostensibly in the spring semester. But Eric, you said this would more or less be a winter season. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Ryan Day, James Franklin have talked about starting as soon as possible, as soon as maybe January, maybe even December.
Oh boy, could you imagine the weather in January in the Big Ten?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I knew that was going to be
We're going to see some snowballs, baby, man. That's going to be some fun television, even if it's bad football.
Well, I mean, it is just to get them in, and I'm all for it. I think. And I got to be honest, don't you guys think Danny White secretly, if you asked Danny White secretly, he would be kind of for the spring football? I mean, he kind of even teased that. He said that on the radio a few months ago about, hey, why not move to the spring where maybe you get more fans? And even in that press release, Murph, Friday, he kind of alluded to, hey, we could pivot to spring football. Who never know, or spring, to the spring. So it wasn't like I think there's people that would be for it secretly that probably are not saying it publicly. I'm all. I think it'd be a positive, but we'll see what happens.
Well,
What do you think?
In terms of Danny White, I think he has to say what he said in that statement, which was, we could pivot to the spring because, and I don't think that's him saying like that's what he would prefer, whether he might or might not. But he has to say that, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. Right. I mean, everything could shut down in 2 weeks, and they would have to be, they would be forced to pivot to the spring if the students come back, which for UCF they will starting on Monday, and things get bad, like. Maybe they have to shut it down if there's a breakout among the football team and whatever. So I think he's just covering his bases there. I don't think he's giving you any insight into what he's thinking. But yes, we do know that Danny White has said, that without fans, they're looking at losing a lot of money. And all programs across the nation, all universities are losing money this year. They would like to obviously host more fans because more fans mean more revenue and yada, yada, yada. We don't know. Obviously, we won't know until the time comes whether or not it's, we're even able to host more fans in January or February than we can in October. And we like I know I say this every week, but we just don't know. Right. So we'll see. But I'm interested to see if schools actually follow through with this. Like I say, like the MEAC and the SWAC have said, then what becomes of summer practice and fall training camp and like the Big Ten, like you said, wants to do winter football possibly. Like, then do we really call those kids back within a few months to go through another training camp and then another season that's possibly modified? I mean, how does this all work? It's all work in progress, but certainly there's a lot of options on the table.
And another factor that actually creeps into this, and this came down earlier on Wednesday as well, the NCAA Division I Council voted to recommend all athletes whose fall
That's not official. That's not official. That is being reported. They're going to vote on it Friday.
Okay. So it's something that we should look at. But their plan is that any fall athletes whose seasons were altered by the pandemic should get a year of eligibility back. The council also recommended, this is according to NBC 10 in Boston, that the NCAA should pursue staging fall sports championships during the spring. No recommendation was made for the size of the fields and how they should be picked, which would ultimately determine whether conferences even choose to participate. This is something we've been talking about might come down, and wow, here we are now, maybe 2 days away, the 21st. Remember they kicked the can down the road from August the 4th, and now we might have some movement on, soccer, volleyball, field hockey, cross country. I know UCF doesn't play field hockey, but some schools in the American do. What do you think they're going to do on Friday, Eric?
I think they're going to announce that they're going to have the fall championships move to the spring. I think it's going to be limited. And when I mean limited, I think it's going to be, instead of a 64-team field, I think it's going to be 32 teams. I think the automatic bids will be gone for this year because I think the NCAA, and Mike Emmerich has said this in a recent interview, that I think they might go the predetermined sites. So that way to kind of have a bubble, if you will. So I think that's why you might see the tournament shrink to 32. But I think they're going to say the fall championships, we will play them in the spring. But I think I think the other reason they're going to move the championships to a 32-team field, because I think they're also going to acknowledge everybody's playing a shortened season and we're just trying to get through it. And that's why we're going to give you all an extra year of eligibility, because we know that you're not going to be happy with a shortened season. So that's okay. You could still play the shortened season and keep your eligibility that extra year, which might prevent some coaches from redshirting people or pause to wonder if, do we even want to participate? So we should get more clarity on this on Friday, thankfully. And I think that'll help the programs, decide what they want to do moving forward. And I think the other question that brings up is, if they move the fall championships to the spring, are they going to allow the current 6 conferences that are still intending on playing Olympic sports in the fall to continue that plan and play in the fall? Or do those 6 conferences decide to move it to the spring? And I've heard mixed things about that. I've heard some might play it because the conferences want those Olympic sports to be played in the fall, so they don't look bad from an optic standpoint that they're trying to play football without Olympic sports. So they might say, look, we could play Olympic sports, so we should justify playing football. Some have thrown that out there. Some might say that they might just go ahead and move it to the spring. So we'll see, but I think we'll start getting some answers on that after Friday.
This is the right call on the eligibility, though, right? I mean, don't you think? I mean, the hard part is going to be, are the coaches actually going to be able to find the room with incoming freshmen, right?
Well, this is the exact same scenario that we found spring sports in with baseball and softball is, okay, well, the seniors who come back and get an extra year, they would not count against the term limits, the team limits of roster count, but they probably also wouldn't be on scholarship, or maybe they will get a partial scholarship. And so it's the same sort of arithmetic that the spring sport coaches had to deal with. At one point of clarification, the D1 Council did make a decision today. It wasn't just reported. It did happen, but the D1 Council doesn't have the final say on this. It's the board of directors has the final say on Friday. Okay. The D1 Council made the recommendation, and the board of directors are expected to act upon that recommendation on Friday. There's no reason to believe that they would not. They're going to most likely say, yes, there's going to be a full year of eligibility for all full sports athletes, no matter how much you play this year, whether it's a no season or a half season or a full season. And if you're a senior coming back, you would not count against the term limits of your the team, the number of or the roster limits of your team. But you would not be if the school could also decide to not offer you any financial aid as well as a senior. So that's going to come on Friday, barring a massive upset. I'll also mention too, I thought that was important. Maybe it's probably under the radar, but it's important that the Student Athlete Advisory Council today recommended that the first Tuesday in November after November 1st, otherwise known as Election Day, be a day where athletes get the day off from athletic activity so they can focus on voting, and not just this year in a national election year, but every year going forward. Now, if you have games scheduled on November 3rd of this year, those remain on the schedule as is. But basically, if that is passed by the council, the D1 Council next month, I believe September 18th is the date of that meeting, then effective immediately, all D1 athletes would then have no athletic activity on November 3rd for this year, and then on Election Day in November for every other year going forward for D1 athletes. And I think that is extremely important. I commend that step. We don't stress it enough, but to get younger people to vote more is never a bad thing. Please vote.
Not just to vote, but also the opportunity to get involved in the process more. Working at poll stations. I know we've seen a lot of sports venues that are going to open up as voting stations throughout the country. So I agree with you. I think that's an excellent gesture. If only we could get Election Day to be a national holiday. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Pipe dream, isn't it? Or maybe on a weekend. No, we can't do that either.
Can't do that either.
But also I should mention that Johnny Dawkins was ahead of this, as many coaches were around the nation, but Johnny Dawkins especially. He said back in June that they were going to basically call off all athletic practices or athletic activities on Election Day of this year to allow their students to participate in the process of voting. And then he said that back a few months ago. So nothing new from UCF men's basketball, but to have that, across D1, across all fall sports and all fall sports athletes, it's very important.
Right. So it's good news. So we're going to wrap up on some good news as well to finish. We have playoff Tacko.
Oh my!
Tacko Fall hold on to your knickers, folks. Tacko Fall got in for the Boston Celtics today on Wednesday night in their blowout win over Philadelphia in the first round of the playoffs. Scored 3 points, pulled down 1 rebound. UCF put up a graphic saying Tacko is the first night to play and to score in the NBA playoffs. Now, technically that's true, considering that Tacko Fall completed his eligibility at UCF. We should note, however, that Joey Graham, who played for UCF before transferring with his twin brother Steven to Oklahoma State. Later on, Joey Graham played for the Toronto Raptors and did play and score in the playoffs. So technically, Tacko is not the first player who played basketball for UCF to play and score in the NBA playoffs. But he is the first, I guess you can say the first graduate of UCF. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a fact.
Listen, we only like transfers that come to us. We don't address transfers that leave us. All right, get it straight. All right, go Tacko.
I got it straight. All right, believe me.
Tacko Fall could be the first UCFer to win an NBA championship ring. Celtics looking pretty good.
Why did he have to go to the Celtics? Why?
Jason Tatum.
Golly, he couldn't have gone to a more fun team, like couldn't have gone to the Sixers or the Clippers or something like that. That would have been a lot more fun. Anyway, I don't want to.
By the way, Tacko Fall,
I'm happy for Tacko.
Yeah, damn right. One more. I'll give you one more stat. Tacko Fall, 1 playoff appearance. Zion, 0. Booyah! Who gives?
You knew that was going. By the way, did you see the video they released of Tacko's mask that he was wearing around the bubble?
Yes.
That LED Super Mario Brothers thing. I need that thing.
It's amazing.
I mean, that thing. I want to know how he got it.
It is. It's like a light bright of Super Mario on his face. It's tremendous.
What I want to know is like, is that the only pattern it can come up? It can show, or can you like plug it into your computer via USB and like put a message up or something, or get like a sports logo or something on there? I mean, I need to know this.
Can he like put up trash talk, like vulgarities on his face as he's guarding someone? Like they look at him. And just,
well, he's not. No, he's not wearing it on the floor.
Okay, all right, fine.
No, he's wearing it while walking around, the Grand Floridian.
It's great.
So, like I said, I need somebody please send this to us as soon as they can. All right, that'll wrap it up for tonight. Eric, I'll start with you. What are you working on this week? We got the top 10 coaches coming in.
That is right, which was voted by our staff. So you guys mentioned elections and voting. We did that on our poll.
Voting. I would say we all consulted one another on this.
It was very heated, very passionate. A lot of curse words were used, and I'm sure that some of our audience will be cursing us when the list comes out, but that's okay. That's the beauty of it. So yes, that'll be coming out, the top 10 there. Plus we'll have obviously all the coverage on the post Friday on when the officially the status of fall championships and what does it mean for UCF athletics, for volleyball, for men's soccer, women's soccer, and cross country. What does it mean? We'll have that over the weekend as soon as we get this finally, officially, all the details of what they have planned for the fall championships and for the fall teams in general. Yeah. So we're going to be monitoring that.
They'll kick that can down the road one more time. What do you say?
Well, no, they can't. I mean, that's it. I mean, they got to.
Yeah.
I mean,
they cannot.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, games start otherwise. Like, people move. You got to let them know, hey, go ahead, don't play. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Never underestimate the NCAA to screw up something that they made the rules to. Anyway, Murph, what you got?
Guys, Dylan Moore's been in a bit of a slump, but
oh boy,
he did have a 3-hit game a couple nights ago. His slash line is still a robust 290, 380, 536. It's still looking pretty. I love following this. And by the way, Drew, we should mention that Drew Butera had a 2-run double. I know that probably means nothing to anybody except me.
Take that, Murph.
And we're still waiting for Bo Taylor to get a hit, unfortunately. But
we're pulling for you, bud. Come on, make it happen.
Man, it's been fun to watch Dylan Moore continue to prove himself a little bit in the 2-hole for a Mariners team that we all kind of knew was not going to be very good, and they're not.
And let's give applause to Chad Mottola and the Red Hot Rays, who are whooping on the Yankees, exposing the frauds that the Yanks are. Chad Mottola, the hitting coach, the Rays, hitting Garrett Cole and Yankee pitching. Huh? How about that?
Wow, this is really offensive now. I don't know what I did to stop Eric.
I think Eric, Brian, let's just delete this part of the podcast. So it doesn't get out there.
But obviously, we'll be talking to Heupel on Thursday. See what comes of that, and we'll see. And we're all playing day by day, so we'll see what pops up on Friday over the weekend and the next week. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. By the way, the Rays are 5th in the majors right now in team on base percentage. I just wanted to give a shout out to Chad Matola on that. 12th in the majors in batting average, but 5th in on base.
I think they're like top 2 runs scored. I think it's them and the Dodgers have been back and forth as far as runs scored. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but they're scoring runs.
I got it pulled up right here. They are tied for 3rd with the San Diego Padres for total runs scored. One back of the Yankees, but the Rays have scored 127 runs. The Yankees scored 128. The Dodgers lead the majors with 141 runs scored. So,
well, we all know the Dodgers will choke at the end, right, Murph?
Well, I don't want to say anything.
Don't give him that layup. That's just too easy. All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. Don't forget to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Don't forget to keep an eye out for all the content we've got coming this week as we wind our way toward potentially a football season. And, of course, like Eric said, keep an eye out on Friday when the Division I Council meets and the Board of Directors. And we'll see what happens. I feel like we're kind of tiptoeing into this thing, right? Like, okay. All right, well, here we go. So continue to stay safe out there, wear your masks, and as always, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. For Eric and Brian, I'm Jeff. We'll see you next week.